Welcome back to JOJ. It's August 28th, the last Sunday of the month, and we are going to kind of wrap up our topic of marriage this month. And if you caught the earlier episodes, we did this because our anniversary was the first Sunday of the month, celebrated 18 years. So today, this one could be a little, get to some people, but we're going biblically here. So, but we're going to talk about how your marriage is a living testimony, especially to your children, to, friends, family, others, people in the church looking up to you,
Other couples.
Other couples, yes. And before I get into the other part of that, I think of couples we've met along the way, and we've looked at them and been like, wow, they really have it together. And at the end of the day, they don't. And, and situations and being as heartbroken of wow, if, that can happen to that couple, what's not saying it can't happen to us. So even if you think eyes aren't on you amongst your groups of friends or, like I said, children, their friends, your marriage is really a testimony. And the other important thing is that your marriage is, it's number one. It's above all your other relationships. And that is biblical. So that's we're going to use that as our verse for this month.
Yep, absolutely. And so that's going to come from Matthew 19, verses 4 through 6, and it's actually Jesus speaking in this where we're reading here. Haven't you read? He said. Haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother, and will be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let no one separate. And that actually comes from Genesis, what Jesus was quoting there, both of those, a couple verses, one from Genesis 1:27 and Genesis 2:24, is what Jesus was actually quoting to the Pharisees who were testing him in that situation. So those were words that Jesus was kind of rebuking them back with, and why he was telling them that. But that was with that's he made them male and female, and this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and two be one flesh. Kind of reading through the lines on some of that there, when we get married, when we got married, we didn't live together before we got married, but once we got married, obviously that was, we moved out of our parents' homes and then, moved into our own place that we rented to get our first little house we rented there in Dandridge, and that was, it's very fitting. It seemed like a pretty good visual of what this is talking about here. And that living together at that point in time, and being one in that way, that's what we're called to do. And we're told that our relationship now, our oneness. I mean, when we're living at home, we have our parents. We're their children. We're not one with them, and not in any physical way that I'm referring to in that. But we don't have that oneness. Once we're married, once we're a couple, we're not. I'm not Odd, and you're not Jennie anymore. We are, but we are literally a unit. We're one. We're one flesh. We're one. One person essentially in that way together. That relationship with your spouse is supposed to be different than that relationship with your parents, or that relationship now that we have with our kids. Even it is, I think that may sound weird to some people, but I love Jennie obviously a completely different way than I love my children. But I mean, we're supposed to do that. I mean, we are, at one point in time, hopefully, our kids are going to grow up and move out and be on their own, and it's going to just be us again. Fingers crossed. But that's, that's our, as parents, that's your goal. That's what you hope for. because we are the unit. I mean, this is where it all starts is with us. So that's our relationship together is supposed to be drastically different than it is with our parents, and truly the amount of love that we have for each other should be more than what we have for our parents or our children, which are obviously our next closest relatives.
Yeah, and that's, I think you've got, you move out of your mom and dad's house, and then I think especially for us because we were so young. So I think, we were still getting parented on both ends, even though we were married. Because we were so young, I feel like if we had probably been 25 and gotten married, we would have been adults longer.
Right. Yeah.
Than,
than 10 minutes.
Than 10 minutes. And, but I mean, for us, thankfully, there was very minimal issues that came from our parents overstepping or, I mean, there were times that, it might be like, hey, your mom, like, you don't have to do everything your mom says. And, there's times that I'm like, hey, like, you need to tell your dad that's not okay.
Yeah.
Like, just things like that. But never did we waver from, it's now you and I. Like, it is us against the world, essentially.
Well, we took that pretty serious, I think, from the beginning.
Yeah, I
really
think that
did.
was one of the, like, we might not have been living perfect or, been very God-centered at the time, but that was one thing that we were like, if our parents were on, hey, listen, this is what the Bible says.
That's some people they'll say it as their ride or die, or I mean some kind of funny saying like that.
Yeah.
But we took that pretty
seriously.
We really did. That was, if we wanted to do something, that was our decision. If it was go buy a car, if it was whatever it was.
Yeah, just whatever stupid choice we made at the moment. It was, well, it'll be fine. They'll find out later.
Yeah. I mean, if we agreed on it,
we're good.
that was all we needed.
Yep. And of course, as we've gotten older, and and like we've talked before, it was about 2 years or so in where we really were like, okay, like we need to get God-centered, and work on that, especially before having kids and stuff. But, and part of that was, we talked about at the beginning of our marriage being a living testimony, was from seeing another couple that, at the time, really spoke to us and talked about praying together and stuff. And that's, seeing that and thinking, wow, they have it together, is what led us to, becoming closer to God and putting God first and having just a more God-centered marriage. And so I think given that, it's so easy. And as, we've had friends throughout the years and stuff of just things happening in marriages or, not even being super close to people. But I mean, you see like affairs happen, like marriages get destroyed. Like just, people you think are seemingly happy, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, they weren't at all. Here's reality behind closed doors. And so I think seeing some of that has always been like, I mean, I'm uber crazy anyways, but like being protective over our marriage was like number one. Like, I'm not going to let other people, whether it's family, friends, kids, like, it's us first.
That's right.
Just no cut and dry. Like, I mean, it is cut and dry. Just it's us first.
Yeah.
And to know that people are looking up to us, and I never want to come off that we are perfect, because we're not.
No.
I'm not perfect individually. He's not perfect individually. We're not perfect. We're perfect together, but our marriage isn't perfect.
Yeah, but our imperfections together in our marriage are, I mean, we're the right person for each other.
Yes, there you go. But and I can be honest in saying that, like, but I also feel like both of our hearts are very, God-centered. So even if my feelings are hurt over something, eventually God will soften my heart enough to be like, okay, stop being stubborn and actually talk to him about it. and vice versa. He usually, once I'm like, listen, this is what's really bothered me, he's like, no idea.
Yeah.
Like,
I
literally had no idea.
I don't think there's ever been a time where you actually opened up to me and I'm like, well, that was dumb. You shouldn't feel that way. I don't think I've ever.
Well.
I don't
No.
think. I really, to where it's like, I completely can't see where you're coming from. I don't agree whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's just because I do. I mean, for one, we've been together most of our lives at this point, so we know each other, really, really well, and so it's easy to understand, why you feel, either one of us feel the way that we feel.
Yeah. And letting our kids see that we're not perfect. Like, that's kind of, because I tend to, like, I don't want, I don't want to say I shelter them, but like, it was recent that when I was upset with you and Abby was like, go ask Dad if we can go get snow cones. I was like, I'm not talking to him. You go ask him. This was turkey season. So, she like looked at me and I didn't say it as in like, I wasn't trying to be ugly or like throwing him under. It just came out.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, okay. And so she asked him, and then Hannah, who we've talked about, who's like our oldest daughter that we have, was there, and Hannah said she lost it. She was like, are they getting divorced? Like, T told, and Hannah was like, parents argue, like, it's fine, it's normal, but I guess I don't let them see it enough, so we might have to fake a fight. I don't know.
To let them see.
But because I do, like, and that's always been our thing, even with kids, and as far as, Abby's getting at the age with boys and dating, and, and just in life decisions generally, I've told somebody, I was like, I want her to fall on her face as many times as she has to under my roof. Mm-hmm. Like, I hope she doesn't do it. I hope it's not a lot. I hope, but if she's under our roof, we can help guide her. That's and right. Help her guide, like, what a relationship is supposed to look like. And, so, just even in your own homes, your marriage is a living testimony. But, even of other people, I just hope that, is to be real with people, because again, if we sat here and we're like, oh, we're the perfect couple, everything's so happy, God just laid this all out, it's just not true. Like, we're still people at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's you're going to be an influence to somebody somewhere, unless you're living on the last frontier on a homestead and there's nobody but you and your family.
Yeah.
So, somebody else is going to be looking at you in some way, somehow, and comparing their their life, their marriage, their relationships, whatever, to yours. No doubt about it. And that's, I think that at the core of that, and we, like you've said, at the beginning of our marriage, it wasn't necessarily the priority that it became down the road, and certainly is now. But when you say your wedding vows, you're entering a holy matrimony, is what it's talked about. But you're there's a third part of that marriage. Us two as individuals are coming together, but God is supposed to be the third leg on that stool in that marriage. A two-legged stool doesn't stand up very well, but one with three legs will do just fine. And God is supposed to be He's supposed to be one of those stools, one of those legs on that stool in your marriage. One other little thing here that I printed out that I want to read. Just kind of want to read through this, discussing a little bit about that verse. Or those verses that was there, and it quotes, what God has joined together implies that marriage is not merely a human agreement, kind of what I'm talking about there, but a relationship in which God changes the status of a man and a woman from being single, no longer two, to being married, being one flesh. From the moment they are married, they're unified in a mysterious way, and that is a thing with marriage, and how it in the Bible it references God's marriage, or Jesus to the church, and how as that marriage, but the mysterious way that belongs to no other human relationship. There's no other relationship on earth that is like a marriage, having all the God-given rights and responsibilities of marriage that they did not have before. Being one flesh includes the sexual union of a husband and wife, but it is much more than that, because they have left their parents' household and have established a new family, such that their primary human loyalty is now to each other before anyone else. And I think that really kind of sums it up, sums it up pretty good. God is supposed to be the third part of that marriage. He brought us together. He, as you said at the beginning of this, He knew that you were who I was going to marry. You knew that you were going to marry me. God knew all that before we were ever born, and He had it designed that way. So, I think that does sum it up pretty good.
Yeah, it does. And I think if you're at that situation of, whether you're married and God's just not the center, it's a good video to share and have that discussion. But even before you get married is to have those conversations.
Yeah.
Because it breaks my heart for people that are not married, that just live together. Like, I mean, you can live together and do all the things of being married, but when you've not taken that vow and you don't have that God centered in it, I mean, it's just sad, because it's like just the best thing, and peace, and I don't know how to explain it, but it just takes away from, I mean, you're kind of missing out because you don't have that closeness and specialness. I mean, like I said, you can do all the things and make a house or play house, is what I was trying to say. Yeah. But you don't have that oneness. And so I just, Yeah,
it does. And that's, I mean, there's nothing more suiting than for marriage. I mean, that's what it's God's design. It's what He wants for us, and it's what he wants more than anything for a husband and wife to enjoy is marriage and that commitment to each other, and for Him to certainly be at the center of it. There's no doubt about it. So that's and if you're in one of those situations, there's never a wrong time to get married.
Yeah.
I mean, don't wait 7 years for common law to take effect. Go, step out and just go do it. Yeah. It doesn't have to be, the actual wedding doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just go get married. That's all God asks for. He doesn't say you're supposed to have a caterer and a DJ or any of that stuff. It's none of that.
But it's good to have a videographer and photographer.
You definitely
and we know a good one.
Yeah, you definitely want to have that part recorded. It is a good part, even if it's at the courthouse. So. Yeah. Yeah, but we'll share these verses again here, and then close out of this one. So Matthew 19:4-6. Haven't you read? He replied, and this was Jesus speaking, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, that's you, and the two will become one flesh, so that they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. All right, so we hope you enjoyed this month of August and us going through marriage, a little bit on our marriage.
I think next month, I have no idea what the word will be, but we'll be live and let you know next week.
Yep. See you then.